The issue is you don't have to have a whole bureaucracy of that. There will always be, like within our time, there are Black people, there are Black students who are not really comfortable unless they're with their own people. And it's understandable. That kind of person, they're not going to be as comfortable talking to a white administrator, especially if they grew up not knowing many white people. So yeah, that Black person who can go like that. But we already had that. We had that 30 years ago. They were beginning to have that when I was in college 40 years ago. The question is how much? And when you read about 150 people at UVA who are DEI or DEI adjacent,
Agreed.
And they're taking up money that could bring in 125 extra students, no faculty, that's the problem. It's this explosion.
Now, I'm getting letters from people saying, you don't like the DEI, because I'm not all that happy about the anti-DEI rampaging, One of my students here at Brown, his name is Alex Shea, has become famous in this kind of small register famous because he took the initiative of asking all of the DEI administrators at Brown what they did last week in the spirit of Elon Musk, and he used some technical apparatus, and he had a AI bot searching through the register of the employees of Brown University looking for identifying information, and then sent these people an email kind of pretending to be a journalist. I mean, not really. There's a defunct student newspaper, conservative student newspaper here at Brown that he resurrected for the sole purpose of doing the journalistic investigation.
Did anybody answer?
Well, they answered, "Go to hell," or "I'm offended by this." I think a few people did actually answer in a more direct way, but I think most people were annoyed or upset by it, and the administration came after him, although he ultimately prevailed in a disciplinary hearing. But I'm just saying, DEI is on the ropes. DEI bad. Get rid of DEI. The question I have for you is whether or not you and I have any responsibility in our sustained attack on the people with three names and our contempt for the overemphasis on racial identity factors. And you've given voice to it in describing how you think that some in the humanities have overplayed that card. And that shouldn't be the only thing. And I, of course, agree with that. And we're both, I think we're both more or less happy with what the Supreme Court did in 2023 with affirmative action and so on. So, I was at the Manhattan Institute until just recently, and Christopher Rufo is a name that you think of when you think of the DEI and the Manhattan Institute as a critic and an instigator of a reaction against. Undoubtedly important in advising people within the Trump administration on these questions. Do we have blood on our hands, metaphorically speaking, for having abetted this revolution? Is it a revolution? The wheel is turning for sure. Not only are we past peak woke, we're kind of like in a reverse, going full speed in the opposite direction on the campuses and all of that. They're on the defensive. And do we have any responsibility for that?
No. That kind of question implies that we shouldn't have said anything, or that we should have only mumbled in an academic way, which would have had no effect. Something needed to be done because we live in a real world of real people. The backlash was going to be too extreme at first, and maybe could be trimmed, as happens when someone like me writes that long piece, as the courts fight back against the worst of these sorts of things, et cetera. Life is messy. A lot of those people on the left back then were saying that, change is messy, revolution is messy. Yes, some of this is excessive, but this is how it goes. Well, this is how it goes when you're on the other side too. You and I and people like us and white people along with us were fighting for Black dignity. And I defend that. And I fully understand that social history is going to be messy, but our hearts were in the right place and silence would have been inappropriate. And I'm going to say this. I don't know her personally, but for example, Claudine Gay should not have been president of Harvard. She did not have the qualifications that people before her had of any kind. Some people had more of A, some people had more of B. She didn't have that. She was put in that position because she was a woman, and especially because she was Black. A female version of her, called her Pauley Prescott, would not have been put in. She was put there because she was a Black woman with a certain stage presence. That's objectifying. That was wrong. I didn't like seeing that when it happened, with pictures of her with the big smile. I was thinking she hasn't earned that yet. Maybe as she got older, but that wasn't right. That's the sort of thing that we were pushing back against the DEI. Christopher Rufo is not nice, but a lot of what he's doing comes from a place that people like that need to come from. I'm sorry. I really am sorry, but 2020 happened. And also kind of 2018, 2019 happened. Our jobs were to push back against that and to show that it doesn't make you self-hating, doesn't make you a racist to do it, or that if anybody calls us that, they know they don't mean it. So there you go.
Yeah. I think I agree. I mean, certainly if you go back and roll the tape, I was very critical of Harvard in elevating Claudine Gay to that position. I didn't think she had the gravitas and the depth of scholarly achievement. Of course, you could say college administration is not necessarily scholarship, and then
but gravitas in general.
Yeah,
just other stuff. Why her?
But the plagiarism was a deadly, and given the arguability of the question about her gravitas, the plagiarism instance after instance after instance was just more than anybody could bear.
And then her wanting to, her at first not wanting to step down, as if, well, because I'm Black, it's okay. That won't do. That just won't do.
But what about the kid that comes to campus from inner city Detroit or somewhere and is looking for a community and looking for administrative support and needs a kind of shelter and wants, and there's an associate dean. I actually know, I don't want to name her, a woman who has a position of associate dean for diversity, equity, inclusion here at Brown. And, she and her husband and Luan and I went out to dinner, basically at her invitation. She just kind of rang me up and we had a Zoom meeting, and I could see she was intelligent, devoted person, and the stories that she told about her work kind of moved me. One story, just to give an example, was a kid who was getting ready to not graduate because he was behind in paying his fees. And, she basically said, you could avail yourself of this or that emergency fund and you could get your fees paid. Now, the kid was Black and this woman is Black. And she put her arm around his shoulder and kind of protected him. And I don't know how different that is than, a Jewish kid going to Hillel and working something out. And, I'm not trying to pick a fight with anybody here. I'm just saying, the identity of the kid, Black from inner city America, coming to Brown. Brown is a very elite place. Having an office, he can go in and close the door, and somebody he can talk to and whatnot. And that person marshaling resources within the community on the behalf of the kid. And I'm sure that story can be repeated over and over again. What's wrong with that? I mean, that's the kind of thing that's being run out of town on a rail here. That's the kind of thing that gets assimilated to, well, they have a Black orientation, they have a Black graduation, they have a whatever. And you don't need to have a Black orientation or separate people into different lines in the seminar to say you're privileged and you're not privileged. I mean, those are, most extreme cases or something. But attention to the particular needs that emanate from the racial identity kind of counseling and support. I'm not sure I'm against that, even though I'm against racial affirmative action and special different standards and, not having the high expectations and, tunnel vision about all they think about is race and they don't think about learning the German language or higher mathematics or whatever.
No, I completely agree with you, but in anybody who has a problem, you're talking about the woman is usually named Margaret or Brenda, And if it's a guy, he's earning. That guy on any college campus, that woman on any college campus in that administrative position, who either officially or unofficially is the place where the Black students can go and close the door. The issue is, though, that there have been Margarets and Ernies since the 90s at least on any college campus worth its name that has a representative number of Black students. I mean, that's the way it used to be. There was nothing wrong with having a Margaret and maybe also a Brenda, and then maybe Ernie over somewhere else, maybe 3 people. That's enough. The issue is you don't have to have a whole bureaucracy of that. There will always be, like within our time, there are Black people, there are Black students who are not really comfortable unless they're with their own people. And it's understandable. That kind of person, they're not going to be as comfortable talking to a white administrator, especially if they grew up not knowing many white people. So yeah, that Black person who can go like that. But we already had that. We had that 30 years ago. They were beginning to have that when I was in college 40 years ago. The question is how much? And when you read about 150 people at UVA who are DEI or DEI adjacent,
Agreed.
and they're taking up money that could bring in 125 extra students. Faculty pay for faculty. That's the problem. It's this explosion that we've seen, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.